Welcome to Hill Hospital Decon. Things to consider. I'm your instructor, Sean McKay. So let's get started. Is your facility capable of decon? What amount are you willing to spend? Is it permanent? Is it portable? Do you have an accessible location? Can it work at all times of the day? Are you able to contain the runoff? Is it easy accessible? How secure is your decon facility? And how can you do the training of your personnel? So, what capabilities do you have for your facility? Decon is labor intensive. It's physically and emotionally taxing by far. And it requires space. Definitely needs funding, and you need to train your personnel. This is not something that you do just overnight and say, "Hey, I'm doing it." People need to be trained in it. People need to know what to do, need to know how to do equipment, and they need to understand the process of decontamination. Do you have space? Do you have something that's going to be dedicated, fixed facility, or do you have something that's portable that you're going to use? Are you going to be using tents? Are you going to be using maybe your ER bays? Um, and then you know you got to train your personnel, so that's not cheap. Are you going to use local personnel? Are you going to bring outside agencies uh, to come in, experts to help train? And then, of course, you got to maintain your skills. And then, of course, you got to maintain equipment in the facilities. Uh, Equipment is not something that just lasts forever. It deteriorates, it goes bad, and has expiration dates. So, you have to figure out that as far as cost goes. Other things to consider: you want to be able to protect your staff and your facility. So, you know, training is vitally important. Having processes to decontaminate patients that come in uh, because you want to make sure that you keep your facility operational. You want to be able to provide the best treatment for your patients. Um, do you really have the funds to commit? Again, this is a thing that's not cheap. Do you have the money? Do you have the capital uh, expenditures that you can use? How large of a commitment can you make? Uh, and is there something that may be better than nothing? You can't just do nothing. You got to do something at a minimum. And who will do the decon process? Will it be all ER personnel? Will it be other personnel within the facility that you use? These are things that you'll have to figure out. Again, permanent or portable, it all depends on your money and your personnel for the ability to build and set up those portable units. What's your manpower like? Again, this is labor intensive. This is manpower intensive. Um, it, you can either simple or more complicated depending on how you set it up. Uh, Again, your space availability is important, uh, and what kind of training, how intensive are you going to do? What kind of suits are you going to do? What kind of equipment are you going to do? This all depends on what kind of training you're going to do and how expensive it's going to be. So when you're selecting a facility, it's got to be accessible to the ED. So the patients have got to be able to flow through the decon process into your emergency department. Um, and of course, you got to have a functional entrance separate because you're going to still be operational in the rest of the things are going to happen. Heart attacks are going to happen, and car accidents are going to happen, and whatnot. So you still have to have an operational part of your facility available. You got to have a privacy for your contaminated patients because unfortunately you're going to strip them um, and to decontaminate them. You got to have an area to store all this equipment in. Uh, Security must be part of it, and they need to you know keep people from coming in and making sure everything flows right. And what's the workability for your staff? Do you have enough personnel to operate the decon process? Um, can it be assembled in low staffing? Again, it's labor intensive. Do you have a good patient flow? Are the areas easy to work in? Because maybe you don't have enough area normally, and then now you're going to put up a decon tent, and it's not really workable. Again, ground transportation for the patients coming in is very important. And can you take care of a large number of patients? Because depending on the event, maybe it's a WMD event, or maybe it's a chemical release, and you have a lot of number of patients that you have to deal with. And how fast can you be operational? Again, labor intensive, and you want to see how fast you can set it up. Runoff is very important because remember that whatever comes off the patients has the contamination in it, and you have to control the runoff. And this is going to be required by law to control that runoff until it can be, you know, taken care of by another facility. Do you have vac trucks? Do you have disposal facilities? Do you have an area that can build up your runoff? How do you get your runoff taken care of if it gets too full? These are all plans that you have to have. Uh, Transportation in and out. You've got ambulances are coming in and out at all times. Again, you still have strokes and you have heart attacks and you have other things that are going on. You got patients coming in via that. Um, do you have access to your personnel? Can they come in and go? And how about your equipment? Can they come and go and move? Uh, what about incapacitated patients? What about patients that are handicapped? Do you have plans for that? These are all things that you have to think about when you're dealing with decontamination. What about children, elderly patients, service animals, critical patients? These are all things that you have to have plans for and training for and how to deal with. What about people that have religious issues? People that, unfortunately, you're going to have to strip these people to decontaminate them. How do you deal with that? Do you have processes to deal with that? And making sure that modesty is kept and making sure that privacy is kept for patients, so that you're not having them plastered all over the front of the local newspaper or news because somebody got in there and took pictures of them. Again, security's got to be maintained. You got a protection of the personnel and the equipment. You got to keep media out, keep the public out. Access must be controlled for patients to come and go. You got to secure belongings because depending on the event, it may be a criminal event, and of course, you want to make sure that that stuff was also decontaminated, and it's able to be returned to the people. Staff, you got to make sure staff is trained. You have designated staff that are trained and are taking care of issues. This is more than just your medical staff. This may be your cleaning staff. This may be your um, security staff. This may be other staff that's in the facility that you're using. Again, you have to deal with training and the setup of the breakdown of the decon units, and of course, medical staff have to be trained in how to decon the patients. And of course, staff is training is ongoing. It's a perishable skill. This is not something you do just once. You have to do this continuously to keep the skills up. So basically, this is what we're looking at: a triage area, the hot zone where the patients are coming in, they're being decontaminated. This warm zone is where personnel are working to come and go in that hot zone and take care of patients. And the cold zone is the area where patients are vitalized and treatment can begin. And then, of course, moving into the treatment area. This is what a small facility looks like in the process. You can see that it's very labor intensive, and it's not easy to deal with. This is a mass fatality event or a mass decontamination event, WMD event or something where people are stripped at the location and the fire departments decontaminate them. And here's some pictures that we're looking at, and you can see, how labor intensive it is, what the equipment does. Equipment is not easy to work with, and it's physically and emotionally um, bearing on the body. And here we go, some portable things to set up. As you see that they're not easy to set up, they're going to be labor intensive. More equipment, more personnel doing decontamination. Again, you see the various different ways, the different equipment that's available to personnel. Some more pictures. Here's some fixed facilities that are set up. As you see up in the upper left-hand corner and up on the top, how about the runoff of the water? How are you going to control that runoff? Are we letting it just run down the street? Other things to think about, especially on outside, is weather, especially in cold areas. Do you have warm water for people? You're not going to be stripping people and putting them in cold water and causing hypothermia. Here's ways to control runoff. As you see down in the lower left-hand corner, they're placing them on a skid, decontaminating them, and you can see the yellow bag is there to collect water. Again, how do we deal with decontamination of different people? You see the upper left-hand corner, that's actually a USAR team that's decontaminating their search dogs. Again, decontamination is labor intensive. Working in suits is grueling and difficult. It taxes your body and your mind. You got to have training necessary to deal with working in suits and decontamination processes. They are perishable skills. Drills got to be done constantly to keep the skills up. You got to be physically fit. This is not something that you just put on suits and deal with. You have to understand that they're going to be hot. They're going to be difficult to work in. They're going to be difficult to talk in. They're going to be difficult to hear in, to manipulate. They're not easy to work in. And of course, do you have staff to do a rudimentary decon procedure? Basically just the most basic thing that you can deal with. And here we go, a facility setting up a portable. We're talking a dozen people or more here setting this up. Do you have that labor to do that? Do you have the time to do that? Here's some different suits. Are you ready for decon?